Hello. So this is going to be my presentation on a rights-based approach to environmental protection in which I explore the right to a healthy environment. So there is a firm connection between the environmental protection and human rights. Environmental protection or the prevention of environmental degradation is a crucial issue that has its connections to human rights as the lack of a healthy environment impacts all facets of life. The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Environment, John Knox, firmly recognized a firmly established relation between human rights and environmental protection and the enjoyment of human rights. In particular, he highlighted how environmental threats caused by extractive industries threaten directly the right to water, food, and health. As such, the relationship between the environment and human rights is holistic, as you can't enjoy rights if you don't have the environment as its basis. The concept of a right to a healthy environment is one that is not exactly established in hard law, but it's been established through the idea of the greening of human rights, in which people tie an intrinsic value of the environment to already established rights, such as the right to life, the right to water, the right to food, and etc. Which essentially the argument for that is that you can't enjoy those rights if you don't have the environment as its basis. So the rights-based approach to environmental protection would center rights holders to address the gaps in current international environmental laws. As it stands, the traditional and international environmental law that would address the obligation and rights between states in regards to environmental issues offers very little recourse to the individuals who are harmed, and indigenous populations who suffer the brunt of the environmental degradation, like that of the Ogoni people in the Niger Delta, have the least amount of access to justice and participation. Taking a rights-based approach would have many benefits, as it would address the shortcomings of traditional current environmental protections by placing the people harmed in the right to a healthy environment at the center and grant them participatory opportunities to secure those rights and restitutions through human rights bodies and international tribunals. So while the specific right to a healthy environment has not been directly embedded into UN law, there are cases and treaties that recognize the environment and how it relates to rights and development. So the first principle of the Stockholm Doctrine recognizes the rights to life and in a good environment and to preserve the environment for both the future and present generations. There is also precedence in the greening or the application of the implied tie to the government, to the environment, to the already existing rights to water, food, health, and life, with the arguments that states have obligations to prevent interference of rights, and environmental harm interferes with the ability to enjoy a wide range of human rights. The African Charter became the first regional treaty to have a specific right to a healthy environment in Article 24, in which all people have a right to a general satisfactory environment favorable to their development. This was first used in the first Environmental African Commission case in the regional system, which was known as Sirac v. Nigeria, which involved massive pollution in the Niger Delta region by the Nigerian government and Royal Dutch Shell. The African Commission found that the government of Nigeria violated the human rights to both a healthy environment and one's right to health of the Ogoni people of the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. They found that Nigeria had duties to take reasonable and other measures to prevent pollution and ecological degradation, to promote conservation, and to secure an ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources. So my case study today is I'm looking at the Ogoniland area within the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. So the Niger Delta region is the collection of 9 states within Nigeria that make up the oil-producing region of Nigeria. However, they've seen very little money through the resource finance allocation that is set up through the oil industry. On the other hand, though, unfortunately, they've suffered tremendous devastation through their environment and to their health. The health, the livelihoods, and the biodiversity and the quality of life for the Ogoni people were tremendously impacted as they saw their waterways and their traditional jobs of both the agriculture and the fishing industries being impacted. In the 1990s, a movement emerged, which was called the Movement of the Survival of the Ogoni People. And they established an Ogoni Bill of Rights, which kind of took a similar rights-based approach, in which they asked for resource sovereignty, economic development, further economic protections, and the traditional uses of resources. So in 2011, there was finally confirmation of the extent of the damage done to the region by the oil exploration and extraction by Shell. It found that all the damage would take about 20 to 30 years to fix, and it would take a minimum of $5 billion to start the project for the first 5 years. However, in the past 9 years since its publication, Nigeria has failed to implement the recommendations. And as the report itself took about 4 years to publish and about 10 million to produce, the Ogoni people found that it was a waste of money and of time, because they found that it only highlighted what they had been trying to tell the government in other mechanisms for years, and that they found it was almost like an HR thing for Nigeria, because they found that it would be them saying, oh yes, we'll do it, and then they wouldn't do anything at all to fix it. So there are some challenges in implementing a rights-based approach in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. As it stands, there isn't really a right to a healthy environment in hard law. The UN Special Rapporteur, John Knox, had been trying for years to get the UN to implement a recognition of this specific right. And as such, as it's not really in hard law, other than a brief acknowledgement within the specific case, for the African Commission for the Niger Delta, there may not be adequate enforcement mechanisms so that they can get their restitutions and to be able to firmly hold accountable both the multinational corporations in Nigeria. As such, there may be a struggle to adequately gain access to participation in these discussions with Nigeria and the multinational corporations within the current structure, as they'd be going up against corporate giants. And currently, a lot of the monitoring agencies within Nigeria are very top-down and don't really employ community-based approaches. As well, there is the forever dilemma of the right to the environment versus the right to economic development. So, which is kind of both a challenge for the rights holders to ensure that the duty bearers do their job, but as well as for the duty bearers to do their job, because Nigeria's main industry is oil, and that they rely so heavily on the foreign investments of multinational corporations in other countries for the production of most of the world's oil. They may find that it's very, very hard for them to go against a lot of the stuff that the multinational corporations are doing, because they would risk that monetary loss. And as well, because Nigeria is a weak state, in that they are so held to the economic benefits, they are unable to actually apply their already inadequate environmental laws to the actions of both the government and the multinational corporations, making it very difficult for Nigeria to be able to implement a rights-based approach because of a lot of the bureaucratic barriers that are in place. As well, it may be a challenge for the rights holders to be able to hold both the multinational corporations and the government accountable, because of the fact that it would be aiming to address the actions of both a private and public um, corporations. And I feel like the multinational corporations could easily wipe their hands of it because they are simply foreign companies working within Nigeria, and they could easily pin the blame on Nigeria. However, the government could easily just wipe their hands clean of it and ignore the fact that their current environmental protection laws are inadequate and say that it is all the multinational corporations' fault. So once again, a lot of the problems do relate to the right to environment versus the right to economic development. And because of this, I think there would be many challenges to implementing the rights-based approach in Nigeria. Uh, thank you for thank you for watching my presentation.